She said she could physically feel its negative energy, although she could not explain where that feeling had come from. Terrified, she screamed to warn the rest of us. In her panic, she had leapt out of bed and fled across the room. I figured it was finally time to share my first paranormal story. I am from Switzerland and have been a scout since I was 7 years old. Since 2019, I have been a scout leader. Every autumn, we spend a week at a scout lodge. Each year, we stay in a different location. In 2020, our autumn camp took place at a scout lodge in Burrow. The building had been constructed into the side of a hill. As a result, the back of the common room was at ground level, while the front of the room was on the second floor. The common room had many windows. However, the window involved in this story was located at the front of the room, meaning it was on the second floor. There was also the bottom end of a staircase directly beneath it, making the window difficult to access from outside. It had an old wooden shutter that opened outward. On the first evening of camp, after the children had gone to bed, the scout leaders stayed in the common room, playing games together. At around 11:00 p.m., the shutter on that particular window suddenly slammed shut with a loud bang. It happened completely unexpectedly. The night was perfectly calm, with no wind at all, so the shutter could not have been blown shut. Several of the leaders, including myself, had a clear view of the window, independently of one another. We all said that we had seen a hand slam the shutter shut. We immediately ran to the window and looked outside, but there was no one there. Since the window was on the second floor, it would not have been possible for someone standing on the ground to reach the shutter. Even so, we all agreed we had all seen the same hand. A few nights later, we were awakened in the middle of the night by a loud scream. It was not an ordinary scream. It sounded as though it came from someone experiencing overwhelming fear and panic. One of my fellow leaders immediately turned on the light. As we looked around, we saw my older sister crouching on the floor about 2 meters away from her mattress. She was still inside her sleeping bag, crying, visibly shaken, and slightly hysterical. Once she had calmed down a little, she told us what had happened. She had woken up and, through the narrow gap between the two slightly open wooden shutters of the balcony door which led outside, she had seen a dark figure that appeared to be entering the room. She told us that the figure gave off an intensely evil and dark presence. She said she could physically feel its negative energy, although she could not explain where that feeling had come from. Terrified, she screamed to warn the rest of us. In her panic, she had leapt out of bed and fled across the room. That was why, when we woke up, we found her still sitting on the floor at the opposite end of the room, far away from her mattress. After that incident, none of us found it easy to fall back asleep. To this day, we do not know whether the two events were connected or what really happened at that scout lodge. For me personally, these experiences left a lasting impression. To this day, they are the reason I believe in the paranormal and in ghosts.